All right, so hi, you're welcome back to my channel. If you're just joining me for the very first time, I want to assume that you are not subscribed to this channel. You want to quickly do that right using this button and then turn off the notification button so that the moment we share a video, you get notified. I tell you something, if you're a parent, you're watching me, I want to assume that you were looking for tools, resources, hacks, whatever it is that you want to call it. And that is why you're here. Then you are in the right place. The Intentional Parent channel will give you everything that you can think of when it comes to parenting. Welcome here. My name is Wendy Ologe. I am the founder of the Intentional Parent Academy, and I'm also the author of 3 best-selling parenting book. No, I like to say 4 because we're launching a new book next week, Monday. Yes. Oh, this week is already on pre-order sale, so you can pre-order. So I have authored Connect to Correct, the discipline that works from yelling to calm, and the latest is walking your child through puberty. And today we're talking about puberty. Isn't that great? All right, so I'm going to share with you something that came via email to us just a few weeks ago. So here was the email. I'm going to read it out and I'm going to share my thoughts with you regarding what we also shared with this client of ours. We have permission to also share this with the world. How nice. So this was the email. Say, good morning, ma'am. I stumbled on my teen son locked up in his private room for long. He didn't know I was home. When I took his phone, I saw he was watching pornography. He cried so much. He begged and said he's been struggling with sexual urges and masturbation. This is a boy I raised well. Have his privacy away from his toxic father. He also mentions he went for confession according to our Catholic faith, and the priest condemned him and advised him, but he found himself there again, twice masturbating. Please, I don't want to shame him by telling a lot of people he's my only child. How do I get help for him? We cried together, we prayed, and he said he felt a lot lighter. Should I take away his phone totally? What do I do? I even like the fact that this woman didn't have to beat the son. Most of the emails that we get on pornography is when they are tired of beating the child, they come back to us and say, what do we do? But really, come to think of it, this woman probably had a connection with the son. And when you miss connection in parenting, you miss it all. Now, I'm going to tell you what this is about. Like many cases that we receive, what happened here? Number 1, the teenager is going through puberty. Now, at puberty, the puberty brain is activated. The hormones are responsible for sexual urges to get triggered. So it's very normal. There's nothing abnormal that your child wants to watch porn or wants to masturbate. Now, it's not abnormal. But the question is, do you even know what happens and how you can help your child not to get into these, dangerous behaviors? Now, a teenager will experiment with a lot of things, including masturbation, especially when no one is guiding him through the teenage works, which was why we wrote the book, Walking Your Child Through Puberty. Part of what I'm going to share with you in all this series, most of them are contained in that book, Walking Your Child Through Puberty. For a long time, I've written a book called The Sex Conversations. And when I found out that the sex conversations were a little bit limited, to the things that I wanted to share with the world, especially for preteens and teenagers, I started to expand, my work. And part of what we did in this year, during the pandemic, is to create a course that helps parents understand what happens in the life of their children and how they can deal with it as regards puberty. And then this book, the parents who were in that course, if I literally, they dragged me to write this book. And yes, you can pre-order this book, it's valuable, and you'll be able to get hard copies in your location. Let's continue. A teenager will experiment, like I said. The third thing you must note is that this child was obviously given a phone without a guide. I usually say, that when you give your child a phone without a guide, it's like, oh, my child has just turned 18 and I need my child to drive. And then you hand over a car key to that child. Who does that? I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm sure nobody does. Not you, not anyone. Anybody who wants to have their child drive a car, first of all, teaches the child how to drive. Is it that you send the child to a driving school, or you teach the child to drive yourself? But unfortunately, what we do is that we hand over a phone and we say, just go into the world. Even when you want to go see a neighbor that have moved newly into your community. For instance, you have a neighbor that have moved in newly into your environment. What do? You simply go to that, neighbor, find out who they are, look, check the things, and even when your child is saying, oh, there are children there, I want to go there, you want to know the kind of people they are even before your child gets there. But allow our children roam around the internet making friends without knowing anything. No guide. Sometime in 2020, this year, we launched a guide called the Media Plan because we recognized that there were no plans on ground. We once had a case where a 13-year-old shared her nude picture to another boy in her class. And then the boy got the picture out in the wild, and then they were requesting for a ransom if not her pictures were going to hit the internet. When this family came and ran to us, part of the things that we said when the child was asked, it was obvious this child didn't even understand what it meant not to actually share a nude picture. Assumption is a killer in parenting because a lot of the times we recognize that many parents just assume that these things are there. But you can't just assume. I want you to know that you need to learn to actually be able to parent. Knowledge is a deal breaker. I say that again. Knowledge is a deal breaker. So, this teenager, you have been given a phone and he wasn't able, to understand what he needs to do. So, a guide. So, if you do not have a media plan in your home, even if you have a toddler, start now to create a media plan. In my own home, we started a media plan as early as the twins were born. Oh yes, I have a set of twins and they are 10 years old. So when it comes to screen media, they understood what was acceptable and what was not. For each age, for each stage that they get to, we will create our media plan. You might want to get a copy. It's just 1,500 naira. That's about how many dollars? I want to be able to convert that off my head. But I'm sure if you get that, I'm sure that's not more than $5. So no matter where you are, you can get a copy because they are e-copies. You can just send us a chat to get a copy of that media guide. Now, puberty for the Gen Zers and Generation Alpha child, which are the children we're raising. The Generation Alpha are the children from 0 to 10. So if you have a 0 to 10, you're probably raising a Generation Alpha. And it's been noted that it's actually tougher to raise these children. The reason is simple. They have a lot to deal with. For instance, having a one-click access to pornography is one of the lot to deal with. It's not so easy. And remember that growing up, I don't know about you, but I didn't have access to pornography because it wasn't widely there now. Not because I didn't desire to see one, but because there were no access. For instance, what we had were video machines. And if you live in Nigeria, you understand when I say if NEPA takes light, that's it, you're done for. So if you live in Nigeria, you can actually be watching and then the light is off and you're stuck. Not even like today where there are generators everywhere. Those days, not many families had generators. We didn't have, for instance. So when you slot in those CDs or slot in those cassettes and they take like this stock. So imagine that you slot in a porn video and you were watching it and it took light and then your parents gets back. Oh, you're done for. So those things were there. So we didn't have the opportunity. The highest I saw was Ikebe Super. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ikebe Super. It's actually a magazine in those days called Hints Magazine. At the back had this cartoon character. that was called the cable spa. She wasn't even totally naked. She just unclad. And a lot of the times, teenagers were sighted looking at these magazines. Now, magazines were available. People were able to buy them and, watch porn and do all the things that they needed to do. But some of us, many of us, had to hide. You need to put in extra effort to actually access porn. Incidentally, right now, when you look at the two scenarios, they're no longer the same. All your child need is a phone, and they are off and they have access to porn. Have you ever thought of it? That is something pretty very much worrisome. Now let's get into what is happening today. Apart from pornography, apart from all the things that put you into those vices, now we're also talking about drugs. There are dangerous activity, there are dangerous behaviors that is happening and is now common. In our time, these things were not common. So puberty in the Gen Z is much more tougher. There's nothing to compare with whatever it is that we saw. Solution to this conversation that I read earlier: if you have a child using any gadget, there was no documentation. I mean documentation, structure. Parenting is about structure. It's about plan. There's no assumption. You need to actually put things together so that you will walk your journey planned. Retrieve that gadget if you've ever given a gadget to your child without a media plan. It doesn't matter the age of your child. When we launched the media guide, we have over 1,000 parents who got a copy, and right now they all came back saying, do you know, when I went through this media guide, I had to retrieve my children's phone and then start over. If your child is turning 13 is not the age to have a phone. There are other considerations. So you can give a child phone at any age, but you need to consider a lot of things. Some of the things that you must consider is there a guide? Handing your child over a gadget without a guide is akin to giving them a car without teaching them how to drive. So you can get a copy of that media guide to help you through this. Number 2, your child needs guidance, especially at puberty stage. So this stage is one of the most confusing stages for anyone. I want you to think back. Remember how puberty was for you? Confusing, no information, and it actually very frustrating. And a lot of the times you were just blamed, you were just told what to do and all that. But when you actually look at it, you needed an adult who would help you and say, I know what you're going through. And I know that this thing that you're going through can be sorted. And this is why this is happening to you. You needed an explanation that you never got. So I'm thinking, why don't you take the opportunity to look at the next generation and correct that error? I am of the opinion that we can correct the errors of the past. Trust me when we say parenting is about thinking, then this is exactly one of the things that we're talking about. Walking your child through puberty. Don't forget to get a copy of that book, because most of what I have shared with you is actually there, and many much more. There are different topics covered in that book, and we're going to be looking at them as we go on. But you will want to get a copy and do yourself a whole lot of good and begin to help your child. What is the content of your sex education for your preteen and your teen? That's another question you want to ask. What is the content? Sex education is no longer valid if you're teaching public and private part. We've moved away from there. That's one of the things that I did with this book, Walking Your Child Through Puberty. Remember I said earlier that we were writing a book called The Sex Conversations, and it was a bit limiting for me because puberty, sex conversations, sex education is no longer about sex only. There are other factors. We have masturbation, we have sex testing, we have tech conversations. We have LGBTQ. What do you want your children to know about it? For those who don't know, I'm talking about the lesbian, gay, transgender, queer, stuff. What do you know? Right? I was able to break this down in the book, Walking Your Child Through Puberty. So, sex ed is no longer about public and private parts, or don't touch anyone, don't allow anybody to touch you. Those are all founded on emotions. Forget it. You need knowledge that will give your child confidence when they get to that stage. What are you teaching? Are you having tech conversations? Are you having drug conversations? Are you teaching porn literacy? Are you teaching your child how the puberty brain works? What happens to the body? What is the science behind puberty? What are your family value system? What is a family media guide? Whenever I talk about family value system, I get this. Nobody actually thinks about the family value system. We just hope. We hope that these things just happen. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. Neither is God forbid. So for those of us who just say, God forbid it will not happen to my children, and do nothing, God forbid is not a parenting strategy. You need to put in strategies. You need to put in plans that work. So when you look at all those things, when you put a lot of these things together, you will understand that sex conversations has gone beyond. Sex education is no longer just about sex conversations. It now looks much more. In all those things that I've said now, can you see anyone that you started doing? If you haven't, we have conversation starters that will help you. This particular book also has a workbook that is one of the things that you can find in this workbook. It's like the story that we shared now, and many other stories that you will be able to see in real terms how to apply these things. Now, the most important question of all of this is, do you know how to walk your child through it? Do you know how to walk your child through it? This book, Walking Your Child Through Puberty, helps you. This book is available on Amazon, and if you're in Nigeria, you can pick up in any part of the country where you are. Remember, this conversation is about caution, not fear. Intentional parenting is a process that is never about perfection. We're not teaching perfection, we're teaching process. We're trying to let you understand what process you need to go through for you to become intentional. I hope this helps, and I hope you return here to come catch the next series on this episode. My name is Wendy Ologe. I am the founder of the Intentional Parent Academy. Don't forget to get a copy of Walking Your Child Through Puberty to do you a lot of good.